just get away with this, do you? You're completely out of control! You can't hide from us! We know what you did! You won't get away with this!
Ma'am, you are under arrest.
I thought I was buying a quiet street and a decent mortgage. Instead, I bought front row seats to Karen's empire, a one-woman HOA with fake bylaws, plastic badges, and a rented attitude. You know the type. The smile that says good morning, while the eyes say I own your oxygen. She didn't know me. Not really. She didn't know that I file things, timestamp things, and that I work the kind of job where lies get measured, weighed, and labeled. So when the pounding hit my door at dawn so hard, the peephole shook, I already knew this wasn't a safety check, it was a performance. 2 uniforms stood there with HOA police screaming across their chests, badges that looked like party favors, and postures borrowed from TV. Inspection, the tall one said, trying to sound like a warrant. The short one added the attitude. Behind them, Karen hovered like a producer, waiting for the scene where I panic. If you're watching, ask yourself, what do you do when a knock pretends to be the law? I crack the door, let the air out slow, and ask the only question that matters. Paperwork? No seal, no judge, not even a city letterhead, just a typed page that looked allergic to ink. I told them who I was and where I worked. The tall one smirked. Being FBI doesn't excuse you from neighborhood codes. That's when Karen stepped closer, pretending innocence, dripping syrup. We keep everyone safe, she said, the way people say we when they mean me. They pushed for my garage. I pushed for a real cop. The plastic badge flashed again, and I saw the scam under the shine. Not enforcement, entrapment. They wanted a shove, a raised voice, a clip for later. My phone buzzed my boss. At an hour, that means trouble. Get in, now. I told the porch parade to leave my steps. Karen smiled like she'd already written the ending. I locked the door and felt the first brick of anger set in place. Driving to the field office, I checked my mirror twice, 3 times. The fake cruiser sat at the end of the block with the lights off, a scarecrow for cars. My boss met me in the hallway with a face that meant deadlines and damage control. Why are locals filing that you threatened them? He asked, already exhausted. I laid it out clean. The badges were counterfeit, the document was cosplay, and the neighbor with the clipboard was staging a show. He pinched the bridge of his nose like paperwork could give him a migraine. There's a complaint in my inbox that says you resisted a lawful inspection, he said. I can't defend what I can't disprove. That stung more than the knock. Because that's the game, right? Don't beat you in truth, bury you in process. Keep your cool, he warned. Prove they're fake. If more complaints land, this goes upstairs. By lunch, the rumor mill had legs. A blocked number pinged me. Watch your step. We know who you are. Cute. Coworkers shot me. Looks like they'd read a headline without the article. In the break room, Davis pulled me aside and whispered like the walls had ears. Thin ice, he said. Also, your neighbor? She's bragging. Bragging travels faster than facts. I filed my notes, saved my timeline, and put everything into a folder named Like a Dare. When the sun dropped, so did my stomach. That same tinted SUV idled near my house. Engine off. Windows dark. I walked inside in silence, locked the door, and set my phone to record by habit. Internal Affairs pinged my inbox asking for a statement. Altercation with local security detail, the subject read, like a joke with a badge. Karen had found a way to stitch her fake world to my real one, and now the seam ran through my career, so I stopped reacting and started building. First move, preservation. I pulled my door camera, clipped the full encounter, and duplicated it to 3 drives. Second, provenance. I captured screenshots of the HOA police patches, ran quick OSINT on the vendor that sells them to party stores, and printed the catalog page. Third, jurisdiction. I called the city clerk to confirm on record that no municipal or county authority recognizes HOA police of any kind. Fourth, escalation path. I emailed the real HOA management company, not Karen's kitchen committee, with 2 questions. Do you employ any sworn officers? And do you authorize home inspections without a court order? Their answer landed in 40 minutes. No and absolutely not. Evidence beats outrage every time, and I was stacking bricks. Then I knocked on the door that actually matters. The sheriff. I asked for a watch commander, handed over a thumb drive, and kept it simple. 2 people impersonated officers on my porch. They attempted a search. My neighbor orchestrated it. The watch commander watched, rewound, watched again. That badge is junk, he said flatly. He took a formal statement, logged the evidence, and radioed patrol to tag the fake cruiser if it moved on my street. If they touch your property line again, call us. Not HOA. Us. He gave me a case number and the kind of nod that waits for a courtroom. Even better, he initiated a welfare check on the HOA unit to verify credentials. Spoiler, there weren't any. Paper trails look great until they're asked to walk. Back home, I cooked in the dark with the TV off and my phone face down. Karen likes an audience. I like receipts. I drafted my internal affairs response like a prosecutor wrote it. Bullet points, timestamps, links. I attached the sheriff's case number, the HOA management email, and the clip where the plastic badge hits my peephole. I spelled out the only sentence that matters. I denied entry to individuals without a warrant. I hit send. Then I did something boring and smart. I documented my calm. Call logs, route to work, times at the office. When people try to paint you as chaotic, nothing hurts them like your routine. Day 2, Karen switched tactics. She flooded the neighborhood chat with concern. She typed about suspicious activity and sound of tools and hinted at chemicals. She even used the phrase "for the children," which is how bullies launder power. The fake officers returned at noon, this time staying at the sidewalk, filming my house like a wildlife show. I stepped out with the sheriff's business card and read the impersonation statute out loud so the microphone could hear it. The tall one tried a grin. The short one tried a threat. I offered them the case number and the advice to go home. They left, slower than dignity and faster than courage. Then the email that changed the tempo hit. Internal Affairs acknowledged my packet and looped in our legal office. They flagged my documentation as responsive and asked me to stay available. Good. I translated that to English. Your facts are heavier than their noise. A second ping came from the sheriff patrol, located the fake cruiser behind a strip mall. Guess what sat in the trunk? A tote full of patches, citation pads with the HOA logo, and zip ties. They seized it pending charges. I smiled for the first time in 2 days. Sometimes justice doesn't sprint. It jogs with good shoes. Karen didn't jog. She sprinted into a wall. That evening, she showed up, flanked by the same duo, no cruiser this time, just their mouths. "This is harassment," she snapped, flipping her script like a pancake. "We have the right to inspect for safety." I turned my porch into a classroom. "No, you have the right to send a letter. No, you don't have police powers. Yes, you can be charged for pretending you do." She tried to talk over me. I spoke to the camera, not to her. "For the record, you were told to leave yesterday. You've returned with the same badges. You are trespassing." The short one raised her phone to film. Perfect. I smiled, held up the sheriff's card again, and dialed on speaker. Dispatch answered. So did accountability. When the patrol car pulled to the curb, the tall one finally understood what real looks like. The deputy asked 3 questions, each answered with a stammer. "Who employs you? What authority authorizes inspections? Where's your commission card?" The responses were soup. The deputy sighed the sigh of paperwork and clicked his pen. Turn around. Zip. Cuff. Karen gasped, then reached for a speech about community. The deputy didn't need it. "Ma'am, you're not under arrest right now," he said. "But step back, or you will be." She froze, partly from shock, partly from finally meeting a boundary that wasn't for someone else. Neighbors peeked through blinds, phones lifted. The show had a new director, and the script had footnotes. Inside, I took the call I'd been waiting for. Internal Affairs, again, this time warmer. "We've reviewed your submission. We're coordinating with the sheriff for reports. For now, stand down and keep everything. You did the right thing. Not a parade, not a trophy. Just the phrase I needed. You did the right thing. I cleaned the kitchen like a person who likes order, not like a person trying to outrun chaos." The SUV returned to the street and sat empty. It didn't bother me now. Ghosts lose power when you learn their tricks. I slept a little, not much, but enough to remember why mornings exist. On day 3, Karen tried one last play. Paperwork dressed as power. A letter slid under my door claiming fines, hearings, and non-compliance citations. It quoted bylaws that don't exist and threatened liens it can't place. I scanned it, circled the false parts in red, and forwarded it to the real HOA management with a subject line that said exactly what it needed to. "Cease and desist your impersonators, or I will," their lawyer replied within hours, furious in the professional way. They scheduled an emergency board meeting without Karen, issued a neighborhood notice clarifying no HOA police, and apologized publicly. The apology didn't fix my week, but it fixed the record. That matters. I closed the loop because loops left open turned into traps. I met the watch commander to sign my statement, delivered a clean drive, and asked a small, important favor. "Run a welfare check on any house these two inspected this month," I said. "Make sure fear didn't steal someone's rights." He wrote it down. That's the thing about real authority. It protects more than it punishes. He told me charges would land: impersonation, attempted unlawful entry, maybe conspiracy. Karen? Aiding and abetting, at minimum, he said. Depends what we find on her phone. I didn't smile. Some victories don't taste like victory. They taste like relief. That night I talked to you, not the camera. If you've got a Karen with a clipboard and a pair of plastic badges on your porch, listen closely. Don't swing, don't shout. Don't give them the clip they came for. Ask for a warrant. Ask for a badge you can verify. Record everything. Preserve copies. Call real law, not yard law. Do not let a street bully turn your home into their stage. Also, and this part matters, don't get cynical. The system works when you feed it facts and starve it drama. It's slow, but it moves. By the end of the week, Internal Affairs closed the preliminary look with a line I printed and slid into a folder. No policy violation identified. The sheriff's office released a brief. 2 individuals arrested for impersonating officers. Investigation ongoing. The real HOA scheduled a town meeting that didn't include cosplay. Karen's porch went dark. The neighborhood exhaled. I took a walk without checking my mirror every 10 steps. When I got home, I opened the garage, turned on the light, and just stood there listening to the quiet. That's why we live on streets with mailboxes and kids on scooters. Not to be watched, to be home. So here's the last thing I'll say, and maybe the first thing you needed to hear. Boundaries are not rude. They're how honest people keep the peace. Knock all you want, Karen. Bring costumes, print forms, rehearse lines. My door still opens the same way, on a warrant, on truth, on respect. Everything else meets a camera and a case number. If you're dealing with this now, drop a comment with your city. I'll pin a checklist and the exact statute you should cite. And if you're one of the good neighbors who watched this whole mess and chose facts over gossip, I see you. That's how blocks become communities. That's how noise loses. That's how mornings get quiet again. The SUV idled like a dare at the end of my street, while the neighborhood pretended nothing was wrong, and that contrast lit a fuse in me. I didn't pace, didn't rant. I started a checklist. I mirrored the door cam footage to 3 drives, exported stills of the HOA police patches, then ran the audio of that muffled voicemail through a quick filter to isolate room tone and shoe scuff. I wanted everything, because people who weaponize fear always hope you'll bring anger instead of evidence. When my email to the official HOA bounced again, I captured the SMTP error and archived the stale technical difficulties, recording from their phone line. If you're watching this and your gut says you're being played, remember, screenshots are oxygen and timestamps are armor. Karen had sandbagged every polite channel, so I moved to the ones she couldn't stage manage. I filed a written impersonation complaint with the sheriff, attached the door cam clip, the fake citation, and the bounced messages, then created a clean timeline that started with the first knock and ended with that cruiser idling like a threat. I called Alvarez and gave him the plate and the faces. He promised to run the tags and check licensing. While I waited, the block's temperature kept rising whispers behind fences, blinds cracking open like eyelids. Tamara showed up shaking, waving a fine for paint colors and eviction language that didn't exist in any bylaw. Do not pay, I told her, and I meant it. But fear was doing what fear does, filling the space that facts hadn't claimed yet. If the HOA website is a dead end, you build a better one. I spun up a simple public page labeled Verify HOA Notices with 3 big buttons: Check a Citation, Report Impersonation, Request Help. I added a QR code and quietly slid it into neighborhood group chats with the line, "Before you pay anything, scan this." Within an hour, 8 people submitted images of identical fines signed by 3 different officers, each using the same font and the same misspelled ordinance number. That uniform sloppiness wasn't a mistake, it was a pattern. I sent the set to Alvarez and the sheriff with the subject: multiple victims, same template, no contract on file. If you've ever wondered how a fire starts, it's 1 spark plus dry paper. If you want to stop it, you bring water and witnesses. My boss at the bureau called me in again. Folder thicker, patience thinner. More reports of conflicts, he said, tapping the cover like it owed him answers. I laid out the licensed versus unlicensed split, the bounced HOA channels, and the new QR submissions. Noise isn't proof, he said, and he was right, noise wasn't. So I gave him proof, a formal case number from the sheriff, a written acknowledgement from the actual HOA management that they don't employ sworn officers or authorize inspections, and a side-by-side of the counterfeit seal versus the real one. We're reviewing, he said, calmer now. Translation: your facts weigh more than their theater, but don't give me a reason to doubt you. Alvarez called back with a pivot that mattered. Plate belongs to a private security outfit, he said, but I'm not finding any licensed contract with your HOA or the city. No contract means no authority, period. He needed more than my word to move hard, so I gave him the community's. Tamara agreed to file a statement if I stood next to her at the substation. A retired neighbor, always quiet, always watching, brought a stack of fines he'd saved like a squirrel saves acorns. We handed over 8 notices with matching typos, 2 doorbell clips of the same duo planting papers at 2:14 a.m., and 1 voicemail threatening corrective measures. Alvarez's tone switched from skeptical to surgical. "Okay," he said, "now we build probable cause." Fear still had fuel, so I changed the fuel. I printed 1-page explainers for porches. No, there is no HOA police. Yes, a warrant is required. Here's the sheriff's case number. I added a line for the camera. If anyone threatens eviction for paint, call this. That night, I caught the cruiser on my cam again. Lights off, windows dark. I filmed them filming me, then filmed them planting 2 more envelopes 3 houses down. They moved like they believed opacity was a cloak. It isn't. I emailed the clips to the postal inspector's tip line with a simple note: counterfeit notices delivered via mail slots equals mail fraud questions. If you want a scheme to fall apart, involve a statute that cares about envelopes. Karen mistook my silence for surrender and staged a driveway scene for whoever still believed her. Arms folded, jaw set, She told me she was enforcing standards. Standards don't hide in blocked numbers or wear plastic. The tall mimic drifted over and told me to move along, and I gave him the only thing that matters. You have no legal authority here. He flashed his toy badge. I flashed the sheriff's card. Nobody blinked until a marked unit turned the corner on cue. The deputy took one look at the citation pad, asked 3 crisp questions, and went very still. You could hear the whole block recalibrating as the deputy said, "Who employs you? What license? Where's the commission?" Their answers weren't answers. The deputy took statements and promised uniformed welfare checks for every house that got a notice. Karen finally looked unsure. At home, I dug through ancient HOA meeting notes and found the seed of this mess. A years-old security program Karen had championed tabletopped by residents who didn't want uniforms patrolling cul-de-sacs. She lost the vote then. She was trying to win it now by force. I mapped her network, the private security LLC behind the plate, the community standards Gmail pushing fines, a registrar record that tied the domain to a forwarding service and buried in a public DNS misconfiguration, an IP that routed through Karen's home provider. I preserved every lookup with hashes and screenshots, then handed the packet to Alvarez. He didn't say, "Good work." He said, "Don't publish this yet. We'll need it intact." Internal Affairs requested another meeting, and I walked in ready to be boring and precise. I answered point blank about aggressive behavior with a timeline, then played the porch audio where I say warrant 3 times and leave my property twice, both at conversational volume. I handed over the sheriff's case number, HOA management's denial, and the postal tip receipt. The supervisor didn't smile, but she did stop tapping her pen. "We're pausing any internal action pending the local investigation," she said. That sentence felt like a floor under my feet. If you've ever had your reputation held by a thread, you know process isn't the enemy when it's finally fed the truth. Alvarez and I moved from collect to test. With Tamara's consent, he set up a controlled call where she asked how to resolve her fine. The woman mimic told her to Zelle, a personal account named after a shell that didn't exist 3 weeks ago. No receipts, the mimic said. Just compliance. We recorded the call under one-party consent, logged the routing info, and traced the Zelle alias to a prepaid debit controlled by the security outfit's office manager who, surprise, followed Karen on a private neighborhood Facebook group where she bragged about cleaning house. Conspiracy doesn't need dramatic emails, it just needs money that walks like a duck. The sheriff looped in a county prosecutor and the state security licensing board. The board's reply was brutal. The company was on probation already for unlicensed activity in a neighboring county. Any representation as law enforcement is grounds for immediate suspension. The prosecutor circled phrases from the porch audio and the fines, then circled a bigger one. Pattern. They greenlit a warrant for the security office's boxes and a preservation order for phones tied to the Zelle account. Alvarez asked me for one more thing, a short on-camera statement to anchor the narrative before the perp walk rumor mill started grinding. I kept it tight. If someone knocks without a warrant, you can say no. If someone pretends to be a cop, call the real ones. Karen tried to sprint through a closing door by pushing a new letter under mine, counterfeit seal, big bold Ordinance 301, and a threat about a disciplinary hearing. I scanned, circled, forwarded to the real HOA firm, and got a reply written in the exact tone I was hoping for, furious professionalism. "Cease and desist," they wrote to Karen, copying counsel and the sheriff. "You are not authorized to act on behalf of the association." They scheduled an emergency board session and barred her from the chair pending investigation. Power that isn't real crumbles at the first notarized push. The takedown wasn't television, it was paperwork with footsteps. Warrants served at the security office netted a tote packed with citation pads, HOA patches in 3 sizes, a printer with the same toner signature as the notices, and a spreadsheet titled Compliance Collections. The office manager folded in an hour. The story he told matched our evidence. Karen pitched community enforcement, promised cover, and routed fines through throwaway accounts. When deputies knocked on Karen's door, she tried one last trick, tears and confusion, until Alvarez read the charge: conspiracy to commit impersonation, attempted unlawful entry, and fraud. Neighbors filmed, but this time it wasn't a show. It was a record. If you were waiting for a victory lap, you'll be disappointed. This didn't end with cheers. It ended with paperwork, statements, and a neighborhood learning the difference between policy and power. Internal Affairs sent me a single-line email. Preliminary matter closed, no further action. The sheriff issued a release clarifying that HOA police is not a thing and never was. The real HOA apologized to residents, replaced the site with updated contacts, and offered a restitution process for anyone who paid the fake fines. I slept for 6 hours straight and woke up to a sunrise that finally looked like a sunrise. Here's the part that matters if you're living this right now. Don't swing at costumes, don't negotiate with plastic. Gather, preserve, verify. Call the real badge. Loop in the licensing board. If they use the mail, call the postal inspectors. If they use payment apps, log the handles and route numbers. Build the stack until even your worst critic runs out of, "But what if?" And when the block is ready to hear, speak calmly into the camera and give people a script for courage. No warrant, no entry. No commission, no compliance. No seal, no payment. Fear thrives in silence. Proof turns the lights on. That night, I stood at my window and watched the street breathe again, porch swings moving, dogs arguing with squirrels, sprinklers ticking like a clock resetting. The idling cruiser was gone, and in its place was a patrol car doing a slow, boring loop for the right reasons. Tamara texted a picture of her fine torn in half and a line that made the whole week worth it. I didn't pay. I asked for proof. They had none. If you're still here, drop where you're watching from. I'll pin a checklist and the impersonation statute for your state, because this wasn't just about me versus Karen. It was about a neighborhood remembering who it belongs to, and a camera, a case number, and a calm voice proving that quiet isn't given, it's kept. The following day felt like walking into a storm I could not see, but could already hear rumbling. The unmarked SUV had vanished from the curb, but I knew it would be back. Every sound outside made my pulse jump: the crunch of tires on pavement, the creak of a mailbox lid. Even my own reflection in the window startled me once or twice. That's how bad it had gotten. I was an FBI agent, trained to deal with criminals and high-stakes operations. Yet here I was, afraid of my own neighbor with a clipboard and a handful of terrified recruits. I decided to flip the script. If Karen wanted to control the narrative, I would create one of my own. I spent the morning compiling every document, call log, and voicemail into a single digital case file. Dates, times, screenshots, even a running transcript of every threat. I labeled it Operation Suburbia. It was half habit, half defiance. Then I installed a set of hidden cameras on my porch and garage entrance, high enough to stay unnoticed, wide enough to catch every angle. When I finished, I sat at my table and opened a blank notepad. If Karen thought fear would keep me quiet, she had underestimated how dangerous a cornered man can become when he starts taking notes. By mid-afternoon, my phone rang. Alvarez. His voice sounded strained but determined. "You were right," he said. "That private security company is bad news. They're under investigation in another county for harassment and unauthorized patrols. I'm trying to get warrants, but it's tricky jurisdiction overlap, interstate business ties. It's going to take time." I thanked him, though the update wasn't comforting. Karen's web stretched further than I thought. "Keep your eyes open," he warned. "These types don't like being exposed." I smiled grimly. Neither do I. That evening, I decided to take a walk, just to remind myself I still owned the ground beneath my feet. The sun was dropping behind the rooftops, painting everything gold, but the calm was fake. A few houses down, I spotted two men in identical dark jackets stapling papers to light poles. When I got closer, My stomach twisted. New flyers this time reading Community Enforcement Expansion, Mandatory Compliance Meeting. Same font, same fake seal. And once again, Karen's name printed at the bottom as Program Director. They didn't even bother hiding it anymore. I pulled out my phone, snapped photos, then confronted them. "You work for her?" I asked. One of them looked me up and down, smirked, and said, "We work for the community." I caught the faint bulge of radios under their coats, maybe fake, maybe not. I stepped back, memorized their faces, and let them walk off. Confrontation wasn't the goal tonight. Evidence was. Inside, I uploaded the pictures to the case file and started cross-referencing the logos on their jackets. A quick reverse image search led me to a shady website for community order services, offering neighborhood compliance packages with fake uniforms for $299 a set. The listed contact number? The same prefix as the one that had sent me those threatening texts. Karen's reach wasn't just local anymore. She was buying legitimacy from a company that specialized in counterfeiting authority. My jaw clenched as I stared at the page. This wasn't a petty power trip, it was an organized scam, and I was the one obstacle she hadn't intimidated into silence. Tamara texted me around 9. "They're knocking on doors again. People are scared." I called her immediately. She whispered, "They told Mrs. Hendricks she'd lose her home if she didn't attend the meeting tomorrow. She's 72. She believed them." I promised I'd handle it, though I had no idea how. After the call, I sat in the dark, listening to my house breathe. I'd spent years chasing criminals who hid behind fake companies and forged paperwork. Now one was doing it 10 feet from my mailbox. I barely slept. Around 3 a.m., headlights swept across my living room wall, then stopped. I moved to the window, heart pounding. A figure got out of the SUV, walked to my mailbox, and slipped something inside before driving off. I waited 5 minutes, then went out barefoot into the cold. The envelope inside had no stamp, no sender, just a single line typed across the front. Final warning. Inside was a printed photo of me talking to Alvarez outside the police station, circled in red marker. Beneath it, a note. "You're not untouchable." I went cold all over. That photo hadn't been taken from a phone. It looked like footage pulled from a traffic cam or long-lens surveillance. Whoever Karen had on her side wasn't just playing HOA Queen, they had access to real equipment, maybe even someone on the inside feeding her information. I locked the doors, double-checked every window, and sent the image to Alvarez with a single line. "They're watching me too." Morning came gray and heavy. My boss texted that Internal Affairs wanted another meeting, and I felt my stomach drop. I was running out of grace. On impulse, I forwarded the same evidence packet I'd sent Alvarez to my bureau email from a private drive, adding one last entry. Escalating impersonation ring using community as cover. If they were going to bury me, they would at least have the truth buried with me. Before heading to work, I stopped by Tamara's house. She looked exhausted. "You shouldn't be out," she said. "They're meeting at Karen's tonight. Whole street's invited." I asked if she would come. She shook her head. "Not a chance." Then she hesitated. "But I recorded them last night, talking outside my window. You need to hear it." She played a short clip on her phone, voices distorted but clear enough to understand. One male, one female, planning to collect dues and make an example out of anyone who resists. The female voice, Karen's, laughed near the end. "He's about to lose everything. Then he'll leave." That recording changed everything. I told Tamara to send it to Alvarez immediately, along with the timestamp and her address. She hesitated. "They'll know it's me." I looked her straight in the eye. "If we don't act now, they'll think they can do this anywhere." After a pause, she nodded and hit send. At the bureau, my boss met me outside the conference room. His face was unreadable. "You're lucky," he said quietly. Internal Affairs just got new evidence. They're calling off the review until local law enforcement wraps up. Seems your neighbor isn't what she pretends to be. Relief hit like a wave, but he held up a hand. "You're not off the hook yet. Keep your head down and cooperate with Alvarez. I promised I would. Driving home that evening, I saw patrol cars lining the block. Flashing lights washed over the lawns, painting every white fence blue. Alvarez stood by his cruiser, talking to a pair of uniformed officers, while two more led the fake HOA cops into custody. Their faces were pale, confused, as if they couldn't believe the show was finally over. Karen stood on her porch, still clutching her clipboard like a shield, shouting that it was all a mistake. Alvarez glanced my way and gave a short nod, the kind that says, "You did your part." I didn't cheer. I just stood there under the streetlight, watching her empire crumble, piece by piece, the flyers being ripped down, the fake cruiser towed away, the neighbors slowly stepping outside, realizing they'd been duped. Fear loosened its grip on the block. Tamara came over, tears of relief in her eyes. "It's really over?" she asked. I looked at Karen being guided into a squad car and said, "For her, yes. For the rest of us, it's just beginning." Because, as Alvarez had warned me earlier that night, Karen wasn't working alone. The private security shell company had deeper ties to a developer, to funding streams that stretched beyond our county. They'd chosen this neighborhood as their test site, and if they'd gotten away with it here, they would have done it somewhere else next. So when I tell you this story, remember, power only wins when good people stay quiet. Karen's empire fell because the truth finally had a paper trail and a few brave voices behind it. The neighborhood would heal, the FBI would clear my record, and life would crawl back toward normal. But the next time I hear someone knocking at my door claiming to be community enforcement, I'll be ready with a camera, a badge number, and the calm voice of a man who's already survived the worst kind of neighbor, the kind who thinks. I walked into headquarters like a man carrying a lit fuse. Every glance felt heavier than my badge. Word had spread: problem agent, neighborhood incident, conduct review. The lobby turned into an echo chamber of whispers and polished shoes. I told myself the same line I tell victims on bad days: facts outrun fear if you let them. Then I pushed through the conference room door and met a firing squad of suits. They hit me with the headline: multiple complaints, threats, non-compliance with local authority. I answered with the only truth that matters: those authorities were plastic, no commissions. No contracts, no legal standing. A panelist lifted a binder of neighbor statements like a trophy, 10 signatures, 10 stories, all rehearsed. I countered with licensing records, bounced HOA emails, and the shell company thread I'd already pulled halfway loose. Then the air changed. The door opened, and Karen walked in wearing a suit that didn't belong to the block, and a smile trained for cameras. She set a briefcase down like a prop on stage. "Good morning," she said, playing community savior. She laid out reports of noise, suspicious activity, even break-ins tethered to my address by rumor and guts. My anger spiked, but the older agent beat me to the next line. "Before we proceed, disclose your family connection." Karen didn't blink. "The deputy director is my uncle." That's the kind of sentence that makes ceilings feel lower. Suddenly, the speed of the complaints made sense. The dead HOA lines, the quiet fear on the block. A panelist said the polite version of "prove it or lose it." I gave them what I had: security licensing checks, a growing list of coerced fines, and a small army of neighbors too scared to sign their names. The room promised an internal review of me and of Karen's program. Translation: the fight moved upstairs, and the clock started ticking louder. In the hallway, my boss found me. "Didn't know about the uncle," he said, jaw tight. "Stay calm, bring evidence. I can't carry this on belief." Fair. I walked out feeling like the building had tilted. Power had changed jerseys. I drove home, gripping the wheel like it could steady me. The street looked normal on purpose: porch lights, sprinklers, a kid's bike laid down for dinner. My phone buzzed. They're at my door. I'm scared. I was on her porch in 2 minutes, heart sprinting. The officers were pounding, one hand on a form, the other on a cheap radio. "Open up, or it's another violation." I stepped into the light. "Federal agent, back away." One of them reached for a belt pouch. The other smirked. We have friends in high places. The irony almost made me laugh. Tamara cracked the door, eyes wide, voice shaking. They shoved a statement at her, signed that I was harassing the neighborhood. That was the play: weaponize fear, rewrite the story, collect a signature like a souvenir. I refused to give them the clip they wanted. No shove, no shout, just the law, loud enough for the porch camera. Impersonation is a crime. No warrant, no authority, no entry. The tall one flashed zip ties like courage, then a voice cut through the scene. What's going on here? Alvarez, off duty, badge out. Relief is a physical thing. I felt it hit my spine. He asked for IDs. The plastic badge didn't blink. He didn't either. Driver's licenses, now, or you're both coming in. He radioed for backup. They melted, bolting for the cruiser. He got the plate. We got a report number. Tamara got her porch back. Inside, she trembled and told me the part that mattered. They'd tried to force her to sign. I told her it was a bluff and asked for a statement, the kind that gets filed, not whispered. She nodded through tears. Courage isn't loud. It's a pen on paper when your hands shake. When I left her house, the street was quiet again, but the quiet felt different, less like fear, more like a held breath. Morning brought the kind of summons that curdles coffee. Internal Affairs wanted me as soon as possible. On my way out, I found a note in my mailbox. Meeting tonight at the community center. Be there. Trap or window, I couldn't tell. Alvarez texted, "We need witnesses or this stalls. Press them." So I made a plan. Recorder in my jacket. Phone set to capture audio. Evidence packet synced to cloud. If Karen wanted a stage, fine. I'd bring lights. The community center was packed rows of folding chairs, lawn sign loyalists up front, quiet doubters in the back. Karen stood at a podium, flanked by her volunteers in off-the-rack authority jackets. Safety, standards, property values, she sang. Polite applause. The room tasted like split opinion. I stood. Lies, I said. Steady. Your police aren't licensed, your citations are counterfeit, and your security firm has no contract with this HOA. Heads turned. One of the volunteers moved toward me. I showed my real badge. He stopped moving. I laid it out for the room. Contracts, licensing, statutes. Volunteers can't detain, can't fine, can't threaten eviction. I pointed at the stack of papers on Karen's table. Let's see the forms. A neighbor beat her to it, plucking a citation from the pile. No seal, no signature, no city file number. Cameras came out. Phones clicked like rain. Karen's smile cracked. One volunteer whispered, "I didn't sign up for this," and left through a side door. Alvarez stepped into the doorway like a teacher, changing the energy of a classroom. "Everyone stay calm," he said, badge visible. "We're investigating unauthorized security practices and possible extortion." Karen tried one last bluff. "I have connections, but the room wasn't buying stock in her tone anymore." Alvarez asked her to come with him. When her supporters looked for a script, no lines arrived. Cuffs clicked. The room exhaled. Truth doesn't cheer, it breathes. Fallout arrived fast. Statements. Photo dumps. An HOA audit that traced fines to Karen, not the association. The security company found itself facing charges for unlawful enforcement. The deputy director uncle denied involvement because of course he did. The scrutiny didn't care. He resigned for personal reasons, a few quiet weeks later. Internal Affairs closed my file with a line I'll remember longer than any commendation. No policy violation identified. My boss shook my hand and said the rare words, "You were right." The block relearned normal. Lawns grew without panic. Porch lights meant welcome again, not watch. The fake cruiser disappeared like a bad rumor. Neighbors who had signed complaints under pressure knocked on my door with apologies and plates of cookies that said what words couldn't. Tamara smiled in a way I hadn't seen in months, shoulders lower, eyes brighter. "Thank you," she said. I told her the truth. "You did that. You signed your name." Here's the part I wish someone had told me on day one. Bullies don't need uniforms. They need silence. They weaponize confusion, borrow the look of power, and hope you'll flinch. Don't. Ask for the warrant. Ask for the commission. Record the knock. Save the emails. Bring calm to a place designed for panic. And if you're up against a clipboard with connections, remember, paper trails beat family trees. I drove past the community center a week later and saw the "We support the HOA" signs stacked by a dumpster, sun-faded and useless. A kid on a scooter cut across the lot, chasing a friend and not a roommate. I rolled down the window and took a breath. The air smelled like cut grass and quiet victory. If someone ever underestimates you, if they try to write your ending before you say your name, do what we did.
The choices
Keep
we
your
make,
voice level,
the
your
values
receipts
we uphold,
organized, and your
the
neighbors
kindness we
close.
extend
Silence isn't
will truly
weakness.
define
It's the
our
space
legacy.
where you line up your
There's
facts.
always more to
Aim
learn,
true, and
more
let the
stories
truth
to
do
tell.
what sirens
So
can't.
please come back.
And if this helped you breathe a little easier, stick around. I've got more stories that end the way this one should, with the knock getting quieter and the neighborhood getting louder in all the right ways.